To create the sketch, I used a finished painting as a reference and began working with a B2 pencil. First, I outlined the overall composition with light lines, determining the position of the central character relative to the background. It was important to maintain the figure's proportions and the character's characteristic pose, so I began by drawing the head, shoulders, and main body line. After that, I gradually added the contours of the clothing, the weapon on her back, and decorative elements of the costume. I paid special attention to the face, as the eyes are the main focus of the image. First, I outlined their position, then outlined the mask and folds of the fabric. Next, I began drawing the long hair, trying to convey the direction of the strands and their volume. After that, I worked on the clothing elements, belts, jewelry, and numerous details of the equipment. The background was sketchy so as not to distract from the main character. I outlined the architecture and surrounding objects with lines, preserving the atmosphere of a desert settlement. During my work, I repeatedly used an eraser to correct the proportions, refine the contours, and brighten certain areas of the drawing. Gradually, the rough sketches evolved into a clean line drawing with a wealth of decorative details. In the final stage, I reinforced the main contours and checked the composition's integrity, preparing the sketch for further acrylic painting. After completing the sketch, I began painting with acrylic paints. I used 3 brushes, a large brush for large areas, a medium brush for the main elements, and a fine brush for detailing. The first step was the clothing. I painted the central part of the costume in a rich blue. This shade complements the pink background and helps visually highlight the figure. I left the rest of the clothing in a light gray to maintain the balance of the composition and avoid overloading the image with unnecessary colors. I applied the main color spots with a medium brush and refined the boundaries between elements of clothing and equipment with a fine brush. Then I moved on to the background. Using a large brush, I covered the background with a rich pink-crimson color. I wanted to create an unusual, fantastical atmosphere and a strong contrast between the environment and the character. I applied the paint with broad brushstrokes, gradually smoothing the surface and leaving subtle transitions of color that add vibrancy to the image. After the upper background dried, I moved on to the lower area of the painting. Here, I used sandy beige tones reminiscent of desert soil. The combination of warm sand and bright pink colors gave the background a surreal character. After that, I began working on the face. I carefully shaded the exposed skin with a cool bluish hue, emphasizing the character's fantastical nature. I paid special attention to the eyes, using vibrant blues and reds, making the gaze the focal point of the entire composition. The contrast between the cool complexion and the bright eyes made the image more mysterious and expressive. The next step was the hair. Using a medium brush, I applied light gray and slightly beige tones to the hood and long strands of hair. The main goal was to maintain the readability of the numerous lines drawn during the sketching stage. After the base coat dried, I used a fine brush to emphasize individual folds in the direction of the strands. The final stage was to work on the fine details. Using a fine brush, I added accents to the jewelry, folds of fabric, belts, weapons, and decorative patterns. I also reinforced individual contours with black to make the drawing more graphic. Some areas were further darkened to create depth. At this stage, the painting finally took on its finished look. The main challenge was to preserve a large number of details while maintaining the character's legibility against the bright background. The result is a fantastical heroine in a desert setting with elements of a post-apocalyptic and fantasy world. The bright background, the character's cool tones, and her expressive eyes create a unique mood and make the work visually memorable. Critical evaluation of the painting. What's good? The character's image immediately attracts attention and is easy to read. The eyes are a strong compositional focal point. The contrast between the pink background and the blue elements of the clothing creates a striking visual effect. The abundance of detail makes the work interesting for prolonged viewing. The linear graphics look confident and establish the artist's signature style. The atmosphere of a fantasy or post-apocalyptic world is well conveyed. What's weak? Some background elements appear unfinished and schematic compared to the character development. The right and left sides of the figure have slight differences in the proportions of the arms and shoulders. There is insufficient shadowing on the clothing and folds of the fabric, causing the volume to appear flat in places. The hair and hood blend in tone in places. The lower part of the figure contains many fine lines, making individual elements of the equipment difficult to distinguish. What could be added? Deeper shadows and highlights. Additional color transitions on the clothing. A static background with architecture, haze, or desert objects. Light effects around the eyes. Sand dust, wind, or atmospheric particles to enhance the mood. What could be changed? Make the background less uniform. Add more contrast between the hair and clothing. Enhance the character's volume with chiaroscuro. Use several additional shades of blue and gray for a more complex color scheme. Style of the painting. The work combines elements of comic art, graphic illustration, fantasy, post-apocalyptic, concept art of game characters, neo-comics, and stylized drawing with markers or acrylic paint. Who might like it? Fans of fantasy and sci-fi? Fans of RPG and action video games? Fans of comics and graphic novels? Artists interested in character design? Fans of post-apocalyptic aesthetics? An audience that appreciates bright, contrasting colors and unusual female characters. The work boasts a strong and memorable character, an interesting color palette, and a wealth of detail. The main potential for improvement lies in the elaboration of volume, lighting, and background.